"Go live on the streets," my father snarled, kicking a thin black garbage bag containing my clothes onto the wet driveway. The rain was freezing, but his eyes were colder. They thought they were finally ridding themselves of a lazy, unemployed parasite. They had absolutely no idea they had just evicted a multimillionaire. If you drove past 427 Willow Creek Drive in the affluent suburbs of Connecticut, you would see the picture-perfect American family home. The lawn was manicured to a razor-sharp edge, the white colonial pillars were spotless, and a gleaming Mercedes SUV sat in the driveway. This was the fortress my parents, Gratian and Sylvia Harrington, had built. To them, perception wasn't just reality. It was the only thing that mattered. Inside that house, however, the picture was violently skewed. There were two distinct worlds. In one world lived my older brother, Caleb. Caleb was the golden boy, the shining star of the Harrington legacy. He was tall, charismatic, and currently in his second year of medical school at a prestigious Ivy League university. Whenever my mother hosted her monthly country club luncheons, Caleb was the centerpiece of her bragging. Then, there was my world. I was Victoria, the 19-year-old disappointment. To my parents, I was a failure of catastrophic proportions. After barely scraping through high school with average grades, I had refused to go to college. Instead, I stayed in my childhood bedroom, the curtains drawn, my face illuminated only by the harsh, blue glow of 3 oversized computer monitors. I rarely came out for family dinners. My sleep schedule was completely inverted, and when I did emerge, I was usually in sweatpants and an oversized hoodie. "Look at you," my mother would sneer, sipping her Pinot Grigio, as I quietly poured myself a cup of coffee at 2 p.m. "You look like a vagrant, Victoria." Mrs. Henderson asked me what college you were attending today, and I had to lie and say you were taking a gap year to find yourself. "When are you going to stop playing those stupid video games and get a job at the mall like a normal teenager?" "They aren't video games, Mum," I would mutter, staring into my mug. "Whatever it is, it's a waste of oxygen," my father would chime in, not looking up from his iPad. "Your brother just secured a summer rotation at Johns Hopkins. And you? You're draining our electricity bill. If you aren't in school, you should be paying rent. You're 19. It's pathetic." I never argued back. I just took my coffee and retreated to the dark sanctuary of my room, locking the door behind me. What Gratian and Sylvia Harrington didn't know, what nobody in my family knew, was that I wasn't playing video games. I was working hard. When I was 15, I discovered I had an unnatural aptitude for coding, specifically in the realm of cybersecurity and algorithmic finance. While other kids were going to prom, I was participating in underground bug bounty programs, legally breaking into the networks of Fortune 500 companies, and getting paid exorbitant, untraceable sums to report their vulnerabilities. By 17, I had taken those earnings and developed a proprietary high-frequency trading algorithm. I was making money while I slept. I was making money while my mother berated me. I was making more money in a Tuesday afternoon than my father, a mid-level regional manager at a logistics firm, made in an entire year. My bank accounts, funneled through offshore LLCs, set up by a high-end corporate lawyer I had hired on retainer, a brilliant man named Declan Rossi, were overflowing. My net worth was sitting comfortably at around $6.4 million. So, why didn't I tell them? Because I knew exactly who my parents were. If they knew I had money, I would cease to be the disappointment and instantly become their personal ATM. My father was fiercely controlling. He would have demanded power of attorney, claiming I was too young to manage that kind of wealth. My mother would have paraded me around, completely destroying the strict anonymity I needed to operate in the cybersecurity world. Worse, They would have used my money to fund Caleb's lavish lifestyle. Caleb, the perfect son. I knew Caleb better than anyone. Beneath the charming smile and the designer scrubs, he was arrogant, entitled, and reckless. But in my parents' eyes, he could do no wrong. They paid for his luxury apartment in the city, his car, and his tuition, stretching their own finances to the absolute limit, just to maintain the illusion of upper-class superiority. The tension in the house began to reach a boiling point in late October. I had noticed my father stress-drinking scotch in the evenings, furiously tapping away at a calculator at the kitchen island. The truth was leaking out of the walls. My parents were completely broke. Decades of keeping up appearances, combined with Caleb's astronomical medical school expenses, had drained their retirement accounts. They had taken out a second mortgage on the Willow Creek house. They were drowning. And like a drowning man, my father was looking for someone to pull under. The storm broke on a freezing Thursday evening. I had just finished patching a critical zero-day exploit for a major European bank, a job that netted me a cool $150,000 bounty, when I heard the heavy, aggressive thud of my father's footsteps charging up the stairs. Before I could even minimize my terminal windows, my bedroom door flew open. It didn't just swing open, it crashed against the drywall, leaving a dent. Gratian stood there, his face purple with rage, holding a piece of paper. Behind him, my mother lingered in the hallway, her arms crossed tight against her chest, her lips pressed into a thin, unforgiving line. "Take off the headphones, Victoria," my father barked. I slid them off my ears, resting them around my neck. "What's going on?" "What's going on?" he shouted, waving the paper in my face. It was the monthly utility and internet bill. "I am paying out the nose for high-speed fiber optics, so you can sit in the dark and rot. Meanwhile, your brother called us tonight. He needs an emergency $40,000 for a specialized medical residency placement program in London. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." I blinked. 40,000. That's not how medical residencies work, Dad. You don't buy your way into— "Don't you dare speak about things you don't understand," my mother shrieked, stepping into the room. "Caleb is building a future. He is going to be a surgeon. What are you doing? You are a leech. You sit in this room, eating our food, using our utilities, contributing absolutely nothing to this family." "We are cutting our losses," my father said, his voice dropping to a terrifying, deadpan register. "We cannot afford to support a dead weight while Caleb needs us. So, here is the new reality. You have 10 minutes to pack your things." My stomach dropped. I had always known they disliked me, but I never thought they would actually throw their 19-year-old daughter out into the freezing rain. "Wait, you're kicking me out? Right now? It's 30 degrees outside and it's pouring. You should have thought about that before you decided to be a useless burden," my father said coldly. He walked over to my closet, yanked a black, heavy-duty garbage bag from his back pocket, and started throwing my clothes into it. Hangers snapped. My favorite sweaters were bunched up and tossed like trash. "Stop!" I yelled, standing up. "I'll leave. You don't have to break my things." "These aren't your things," my mother sneered. "We paid for these clothes. We paid for this roof. We are doing you a favor by letting you take the clothes on your back. Go find a shelter. Go live on the streets. Maybe the real world will finally beat some work ethic into you." I stood frozen, the harsh reality washing over me. I could have ended it right then. I could have pulled up my banking dashboard. I could have shown them the 7-figure balance. I could have paid off their mortgage, handed Caleb his 40 grand, and bought their eternal, fawning love. But as I looked at my father's contemptuous sneer and my mother's cold, unfeeling eyes, A profound sense of clarity hit me. They don't love me. They only loved what I could do for their image. If I showed them the money, I would be a hostage for the rest of my life. So I did the only thing I could do. I stayed silent. I grabbed my custom-built encrypted laptop, the single most important item I owned, holding the keys to my entire empire, and slipped it into my waterproof backpack. I grabbed a jacket, shoved my phone into my pocket, and picked up the garbage bag my father had filled. "I'm going," I said quietly. My father escorted me down the stairs like a criminal, being marched to the gallows. He opened the front door, the freezing wind and rain immediately whipping into the foyer. I stepped out onto the porch. "Go live on the streets," my father snarled one last time, tossing the bag onto the wet driveway. "Don't come back until you've made something of yourself, though I doubt you ever will." Slam. The deadbolt clicked. The porch light clicked off. I was standing in the dark, soaking wet. I walked slowly down the driveway, dragging the plastic bag behind me. A neighbor's curtain twitched. I knew exactly what this looked like. The tragic, rebellious teen finally getting the boot. I walked 2 blocks away, shivering as the rain soaked through my jacket, until I was completely out of sight of the Willow Creek subdivision. I stood under the awning of a closed bakery, took out my phone, and opened my banking app. Balance: $6,452,891.43. I wiped a raindrop off the screen, took a deep breath, and opened the Uber app. I requested an Uber black SUV. 5 minutes later, a pristine black Cadillac Escalade pulled up to the curb. The driver, a kind-looking man in a suit, jumped out with an umbrella. "Miss Harrington?" he asked, looking slightly confused by my soaked sweatpants and the garbage bag. "That's me," I said, offering a small smile. "Could you put the bag in the trunk, please?" I climbed into the heated leather interior, the rich smell of luxury washing over me. "Where to, miss?" the driver asked. "The Four Seasons downtown, please," I replied, pulling out my phone to book the presidential suite for the next month. It was going to cost me about $35,000. It didn't matter. As the city lights blurred past the tinted windows, a strange sensation settled in my chest. I wasn't sad. I wasn't scared. I was completely, utterly free. But as I settled into the plush seat, my mind kept drifting back to the excuse my father had used. $40,000 for a specialized medical residency program in London. My fingers danced across my phone screen. I remote accessed my secure servers and pulled up Caleb's digital footprint. It was a habit of mine. Trust no one. Verify everything. I routed through a VPN, accessed his public social media metadata, and cross-referenced his bank routing numbers, which I had memorized from a wire transfer my parents made months ago. It took me less than 12 minutes to break through the flimsy firewalls of Caleb's personal life. And as the data flooded onto my screen, the sick truth of the golden child was laid bare. There was no residency program in London. Caleb wasn't even enrolled in medical school anymore. He had quietly failed out 6 months ago. The $40,000 wasn't for tuition. It was to pay off a massive, dangerous debt he had accrued at underground poker rings and illegal sports books across the state. My parents had just kicked me out into the cold to save a son who was actively bleeding them dry. I smiled, staring out at the rain-slicked city streets. The Harrington family was a house of cards, and the wind was just starting to blow. The presidential suite at the Four Seasons was a sprawling, 3,000-square-foot masterpiece of marble, floor-to-ceiling glass, and panoramic views of the city skyline. For the first few days, I didn't leave. I ordered room service, set up my encrypted workstations on a massive mahogany dining table, and watched the rain wash the city clean. I wasn't mourning the loss of my family. I was strategizing my next corporate move. On Tuesday morning, I invited my attorney, Declan Rossi, and a newly retained wealth manager, Arthur Pendleton, up to the suite. Declan, a sharp-featured man in a bespoke Brioni suit, had only ever spoken to me via encrypted VoIP calls. When I opened the door in a fresh pair of Lululemon leggings and an oversized Yale hoodie, he actually dropped his leather briefcase. "You're Victoria?" Declan asked, blinking rapidly behind his tortoiseshell glasses. I expected, well, someone much older, and perhaps a man. "Surprise," I said dryly, waving them inside. "Let's get to work. I need to move capital, and I need to do it quietly." Over the next 4 months, my life transformed. I transitioned from freelance bug bounties to founding my own private cybersecurity consulting firm, Aegis Protocol LLC. Because I had the capital to hire the best front-facing executives, people with Ivy League degrees and silver hair to sit in boardrooms, I remained the anonymous ghost in the machine, writing the core algorithms that secured data for 2 major hedge funds and a private healthcare network. My net worth quietly eclipsed the $10 million mark. Meanwhile, I kept a very close, digital eye on 427 Willow Creek Drive. The $40,000 my parents had scraped together for Caleb's fake London residency had vanished into the ether within 48 hours of the wire transfer. Through my backdoor access to Caleb's financial footprint, I watched in real time as he bled our parents dry. To understand the sheer scale of his deception, I compiled a dossier. The reality of his Ivy League medical journey was staggering when placed side by side with the lies he fed Gratian and Sylvia. By late February, the Harrington facade was completely shattering. My father was laid off from his logistics job. My mother's country club membership was quietly revoked due to unpaid dues. And Caleb? The moment the money stopped flowing, he vanished. He changed his phone number, abandoned his apartment, and effectively went into hiding to avoid the loan sharks he had foolishly entangled himself with. Then came the final nail in the coffin. A notification popped up on my secondary monitor, flagged by an automated web scraper I had set up for local real estate listings. Notice of public foreclosure auction. 427 Willow Creek Drive. They had defaulted on the second mortgage. The bank was taking the house. They had exactly 30 days to vacate before the property was auctioned off to the highest bidder on the courthouse steps. I leaned back in my ergonomic leather chair, sipping a matcha latte. My parents had thrown me out into the freezing rain to save a son who had ultimately destroyed them. I picked up my phone and dialed my real estate broker, Samantha Hayes. "Samantha," I said, my voice steady and cold. "There's a property going up for auction next month in Connecticut. I want it. I don't care about the bidding war. Just outbid everyone. But make sure the purchase is shielded under a blind trust. The current occupants cannot know who the new owner is." "Consider it done, Victoria," she replied. April arrived with a bitter, unseasonable chill that mirrored the cold precision of my corporate takeover. My life had expanded far beyond the isolated luxury of the Four Seasons. Through my firm, Aegis Protocol LLC, I was now securely routing multi-million-dollar cybersecurity contracts for institutions like Goldman Sachs and Barclays. I had also hired a 2-man personal protection detail. The lead was a stoic, fiercely observant former Marine Force recon veteran named Wyatt. Wyatt didn't ask questions. He just ensured that the ghost behind Aegis remained completely untouchable. Despite the explosive growth of my wealth, I deliberately stayed grounded. During the first few chaotic weeks after my eviction, when the adrenaline of my new reality kept me awake for days, I had found refuge in a 24-hour diner on the edge of the city called the Copper Skillet. There, a career waitress named Abigail, a woman with a warm smile, tired eyes, and a devastatingly sharp wit, had kept my coffee cup full. She didn't know I was a millionaire. She just saw a young girl in a damp hoodie typing furiously on a laptop at 3 a.m., and she slipped me 3 slices of cherry pie, telling me, "Keep fighting, kid. The world only breaks the ones who stop swinging." When the diner's owner threatened to close the place down due to bankruptcy in March, I didn't hesitate. I bought the entire commercial property through a shell LLC, transferred the deed to Abigail, and named her the majority owner and general manager. Abigail became the closest thing I had to a mother. She saw my worth when I looked like a vagrant. My actual mother had only seen a vagrant. That stark contrast was at the forefront of my mind on the morning of April 14th. It was the day Gratian and Sylvia Harrington were legally mandated to surrender the keys to 427 Willow Creek Drive. I didn't take an Uber this time. I drove myself in the sleek, midnight blue Porsche Panamera I had purchased outright via wire transfer from Beverly Hills Porsche. Wyatt followed a discreet 2 blocks behind me in a blacked-out Tahoe. I wore a tailored charcoal blazer, crisp trousers, and a silver Rolex Daytona on my wrist. I looked exactly like the kind of elite, untouchable success story my mother would have killed to brag about at her country club luncheons. I parked at the end of my old street and let the engine idle, watching the brutal mechanics of instant karma unfold. A rusted, dented U-Haul truck sat awkwardly in the immaculate driveway. My father, looking 15 years older, his shoulders hunched and his face covered in grey stubble, was dragging a heavily taped cardboard box out the front door. My mother trailed behind him, wearing a faded tracksuit I had never seen before. She was weeping quietly into a crumpled tissue, clutching a silver-framed photograph of Caleb to her chest. The pristine lawn they used to obsess over was overgrown with weeds. The gleaming Mercedes SUV was long gone, repossessed by Wells Fargo weeks ago. I checked my watch. The bank's escrow representative was scheduled to arrive at noon to take possession of the keys on behalf of the new owner. The Aegis Blind Trust. I killed the engine, stepped out of the Porsche, and walked slowly up the driveway, my heels clicking sharply against the wet concrete. The rhythmic, expensive sound made my father look up. He squinted against the harsh midday sun, wiping a streak of sweat and grime from his forehead. "Excuse me," he said, his voice raspy, hollow, and utterly defeated. "If you're from the escrow agency, we just need 10 more minutes. We're getting the last of the kitchen boxes. Please." My mother looked over. Her red, puffy eyes widened as she took in the impeccable cut of my tailored suit, the flashing watch, and the $100,000 sports car idling by the curb. It took her a full, agonizing 10 seconds to reconcile the wealthy woman standing in front of her with the daughter she had thrown into the freezing rain. "Victoria?" she whispered. Her hands trembled so violently that the framed picture of Caleb slipped from her grasp. It hit the concrete driveway face first, the glass shattering into 100 glittering shards across the pavement. I slowly took off my designer sunglasses. "Hello, Mum? Dad?" My father stared at me, his jaw practically unhinged. He looked from me to the Porsche, to the Rolex, and back to my face. His mind was violently rejecting the data it was receiving. What? What are you doing here? How are you dressed like that? Are you in trouble? Did you steal that car? I couldn't help but laugh. It was a dry, razor-sharp sound that echoed off the empty suburban houses. Always the eternal optimist when it comes to me, Dad. No, I didn't steal a car. I bought it. Cash. What are you talking about? My mother stammered, taking a hesitant step forward, crunching the broken glass beneath her cheap sneakers. Victoria, please. We are having the worst, most humiliating day of our entire lives. Your brother is completely missing. We lost the house. The bank took everything we built. If you came here to gloat at us, just leave. Haven't we suffered enough? The bank didn't take the house, Mom, I said smoothly, reaching into my leather tote bag. I pulled out a thick, heavy manila envelope bearing the watermarked seal of my attorneys, Cravath, Swain, and Moore. I held it out to my father. His trembling, calloused hands opened the brass clasp. He pulled out the official deed to 427 Willow Creek Drive. His bloodshot eyes frantically scanned the dense legal jargon, eventually landing on the bolded signature line at the bottom. Purchasing entity, Aegis Blind Trust. Principal beneficiary and sole owner, Victoria Harrington. You? My father choked out, his face draining of all color until it was an ashen, sickly gray. You bought our house. How? With what money? You didn't even have a job. You sat in the dark. I've been working since I was 15, Dad, I explained, my voice completely devoid of the suffocating fear that used to paralyze me in this very driveway. I build high-level cybersecurity algorithms for the financial sector. By the time you kicked me out with my life in a garbage bag, my net worth was over $6 million. Today, it's closer to 12. My mother let out a strangled, breathless gasp, clapping both hands over her mouth. 12? 12 million? Victoria, why didn't you tell us? We could have. She stopped herself, her eyes darting away, but the sickening implication hung heavy in the spring air. We could have used it. We could have taken it. I didn't tell you because I knew exactly who you were, and I knew you would bleed me dry, just like Caleb did, I said, my tone dropping to an icy whisper. Don't you dare bring your brother into this, my father snapped, a brief, desperate flash of his old, commanding rage returning to his eyes. He is going through a severe medical crisis in London. We did what any good parents would do. We sacrificed to support his career. He's not in London, Dad, I said. I reached into my bag one last time and pulled out a second set of documents. It was the financial dossier I had meticulously compiled. Caleb flunked out of his medical program 6 months before you evicted me. He took your $40,000 and paid off an illegal sports betting syndicate out of Atlantic City. He gambled away his tuition, his rent, and your entire retirement fund on poker and horses. That's why he's not here, helping you load this U-Haul. He's hiding from the people he owes money to. I handed my father the printed bank routing statements, the encrypted metadata logs, and the undeniable mathematical proof of his golden child's absolute ruin. As Gratian Harrington read the papers, his knees physically gave out. He collapsed back against the side of the rusted U-Haul, sliding down the metal siding until he hit the driveway, the documents scattering over the wet pavement and the broken glass of Caleb's picture. My mother fell to her knees beside him, sobbing hysterically, frantically shaking her head in denial as she read the lines of squandered cash. They had sacrificed everything, their home, their dignity, and their own daughter, for a lie. And the truth shattered them right there on the concrete. I looked down at the two people who had brought me into the world. I thought I would feel triumphant, but I only felt a cold, sterile pity. The universe had delivered its own brutal justice. I'm not going to leave you to die on the streets, because I'm not you, I said quietly, my voice cutting cleanly through my mother's wailing. There is a small, one-bedroom apartment above the Copper Skillet Diner downtown. I own the building. You can live there rent-free. But you will pay your own utilities, and you will earn your keep. I've spoken to the manager, Abigail. She needs a new dishwasher and a prep cook for the graveyard shift. You start tomorrow at 10 p.m. I turned around, slid my designer sunglasses back over my eyes, and began walking back to my car. "Victoria, wait!" my mother shrieked, scrambling to her feet, her hands reaching out toward my tailored jacket. "Please, you have $12 million. You can save us. We're your family." "No, Mom," I said, opening the door to the Porsche without looking back. "You are just my landlords, and your lease is up." As I drove away from Willow Creek Drive for the last time, the rearview mirror reflected a house that was no longer a prison, but just another asset in my portfolio. I didn't feel vindictive. I just felt an overwhelming sense of peace. Family isn't always defined by blood. Sometimes it's defined by the people who see your worth before your bank account proves it to the rest of the world.